So, wow. Who knew that dog ownership could be so god awfully expensive?
Uh, I did.
Well,
It's one of the reasons we have avoided that. Oh my gosh. My parents have always had dogs, so I just always knew.
so Freddie the other night decided he was going to jump out of the truck.
While moving?
No, no,
Okay.
thankfully not while moving.
Okay.
We
I've
pulled up.
done that. That's happened to me before. A dog has jumped out the window while the car is going down the street. Little
Uh,
wiener
he
dog
was he
did a
he
little
was
wiener roll down the street.
well. Did he um tear his knee ligament?
No.
Well, Freddie did,
Okay.
and
Ready.
just to have them tell me that that's what he did was $514. Not the fix. Not the fix.
Oh man.
The fix apparently is
And what
we're
are you going to
looking at.
say? What do you say to the doctor? Like, yeah, that's too much. Go ahead and put
Yeah,
him
well,
down. Like, what are you going to say? Like, they know they have you.
yeah, yeah. So I told Magdalena because she's thinking about being a brain surgeon. She's been saying this for a very, very long time. So
Okay.
and so I
That's
mean,
awesome.
great. That's fantastic. And so
If you could figure out how to make people smarter.
And so one of the things that, so yesterday, obviously this is, her dog and she's just beside herself. I mean, we all are. I mean, I'm worried about the pup and everything else. And, at first I was like, well, he doesn't really seem like he's hobbling a little bit, but, he doesn't seem like I touched his leg and stuff and he really didn't yelp or anything. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just kind of a little twisted ankle kind of thing or something like that, whatever, a dog can get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because he's done it so many times, but maybe not from that height. And I think he landed awkwardly. And
Sure.
she's, we got this whole, bill and everything. And we paid him, and we're like, they're getting ready to take him in for X-rays and stuff like that. So we're like, all right, well, he's going to be a while. Why don't we've been sitting in a car freezing our butt off in the parking lot because you can't go inside
Oh,
for 2.5
geez.
hours.
Okay.
Why don't we go home, go grab something to eat and all that other stuff. She's like, all right, let's do that. So we're driving home. And I was just thinking about how much the cost is and everything else. I was like, well, why don't you become a vet
Sure.
instead? I was like, you love animals. I mean, why don't you become a vet instead of, instead of, a human doctor? And she's paused for a second and she's like, yeah, see, I love animals too much to cut into them. And I don't have that problem with humans.
What?
I was just like,
Keeping it real.
oh, I love you, my child.
That's so funny. I didn't expect that. That was great.
I sort of didn't either, but I was just like, I slow clapped her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Just
Fantastic.
absolutely beautiful. Uh, my gosh. I mean, and so now, our next step is to obviously take the dog. We got an appointment with our vet to take him in, and they're going to kind of like check him in a week. And then he is a perfect candidate for basically, she likened the whole thing to an injury that a football player would suffer on the field.
Hmm.
And I'm like, and so I was telling Magdalena this, and I was like, well, let's go pick up your little football player. And she kind of like, I mean, she has not been in a giggly laughing mood. So told her that, and she kind of giggled a little bit. And now that he's home and he's not allowed to move or anything else, he's got to pretty much stay almost like a little bump on a log
Sure.
for
Sure.
for a while,
Yeah.
until we at least, take our next steps forward and stuff. And so they gave us like an anti-inflammatory and then basically a painkiller to like more or less knock him out. And so we basically have to keep him sedated for the next week
Is
until
he
we can get there.
excited? Is he normally like an excited dog?
I mean, he he's when he's full of energy, he's full of energy. He'll run
Yeah.
around and jump up and down, and he'll like, hobble on his, back two legs, and it's his left rear leg.
Hmm.
And so, he'll like prance around on two legs, like looking
How
for food
weird
and
that a
stuff like
rear
that.
leg would get hurt jumping out of the car because like dogs don't land on their rear legs first, right?
I think he kind of like he was going all
Oh,
four
okay.
legs at
So
once.
crazy. Yeah, it's so interesting because like the dog would never understand, right? What's going on. And
Yeah.
it's
No.
like when you get Like I had a cat when I was a kid, and at one point we had to get there was a minor surgery for the cat, and had to put the cone on, the cone of shame on the
Oh yeah,
cat,
yeah. He's gonna
and
get
it's and
attention.
it's just like the pets are so sad when they have
You're like,
these things.
what the fuck's going on with this?
Yeah.
What have you done to me?
Oh, this is just reminding me of like a couple of years ago when I was out after work. I came home and the kids were out in the street, and we live on a cul-de-sac, so it's
Yep.
okay. It's okay, people. Don't report me. Um, and we were playing frisbee, and I just took a wrong step, and I felt my leg snap. Like I felt a large snap like a rubber band snapped in my leg, and yeah, a full-on tendon in my lower calf snapped, and I didn't really realize that at the time. I was like, "Oh, that can't be good." And I'm like eating dinner, and it's just getting worse. The pain is getting worse and worse, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, this sucks." I'm gonna go take some ibuprofen, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then all night long, it just hurt so bad. The next morning, I had my son drive me to the hospital and got the checkout, and yeah, I snapped I think it's called the plantaris tendon. I can't remember now, but they're like, "Yep, it's okay. You didn't need that one." Luckily, it wasn't a
Okay.
vital tendon. They're like, "This is the one we use to harvest for if you snap your ACL or whatever." So, um, like a week later, I was walking again, totally fine. But it just reminds me, like, all of a sudden, boom, you're down, and like you're not getting up, and you're gonna lay around, and you're gonna be forced to lay around for a while. I can understand, like a human can totally get that, but a dog is just like, "What did you do to me? Who
It's
did
like
this? You did this. I'm gonna bite you."
he's, he's looking at us like, people,
Yeah,
can you kind of explain to me what the heck's going on here?
right. Oh
Mm.
well. I've also heard stories from a friend of mine who grew up on a farm, and like he's got two little kids. He lives the same city as I do, and they've got cats. And he's like, when I was growing up, we had farm cats. Like I'm not even sure they had names, right? It's just
Cat
like
one, cat two.
right. And if something happens to a cat, you get another cat, right? Like there's an understanding on a farm that like you're not gonna go spend all your money at the vet and do everything you can to save the cat. No, you're going to get another cat. And he's like, this is how I approach this with my kids. He's like,
Oh, if something happens to one of the
something happened
kids.
to the cat. It's like, yeah, we get it. And it's like his daughter especially was like fully crushed. Something happened to they had two cats. One of them, something happened to. And he was like, he's like, I never really thought about it any other way because I grew up on the farm. Right. And this is how my parents like made it work for us, and so that's how I've always thought about it. He's like, now his daughter is like in a deep depression because something happened to the cat, and he's just like, I just never thought it would be like this.
Hmm.
But yeah, the pet industry, man, like there's something that you wanted to get in on the ground floor of, because holy moly, like everywhere you go there's like a whole aisle in the store for pets. And it doesn't matter if you can go to the kitchen store and you can find stuff to make gourmet doggy biscuits, and it's a cottage industry that's just
Oh
blown
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Little booties for your dog so that it can walk in the snow, and it's like, I thought dogs could walk in the snow without
Mm.
that, but people
Isn't
like to
wasn't
pamper
that
their
called
dogs.
evolution?
I get it. Like ice crystals can like do little tears in their little paws and stuff,
Little
and
paw pads,
but it's pretty funny. Like, yeah, there's people who love to pamper their animals,
and it's okay.
and
People pamper their kids.
whatever makes you happy.
Yeah,
I've definitely seen
I
a trend
honestly
to
thought that you
people are
were.
definitely treating their animals as if they are humans,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe they are
yeah.
better than humans. I don't know.
You know what? In a way, they are, because they'll look at you and they're like, you know what? I love you, and then you have somebody else, human, look at you. You know what? Ugh, you. I can't stand you.
Right,
You're like, you know what? What's with the animosity, man? Dogs ain't got no animosity unless you remind them of somebody who mistreated them.
right, yeah, totally.
So it was interesting because I honestly thought when you were telling me the farm story, and you were like, and he told his kids that, if we, something happens to one of the kids, we'll get another one.
Right.
I
Apply it to
honestly
the
thought
kids.
that's where you're going.
I have heard of people say, like, okay, before we get the animal, we're going to have an agreement right now about how much we will spend on the animal to fix it or whatever.
Oh gosh, and then that's totally out the window when something
Pretty
happens.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would be pretty rare if anybody ever stuck to that.
Well, we're about to find out.
Yeah.
Like, this
Yeah.
dog better not be
Well,
expensive.
Maggie, this went over the threshold, so
I mean, we'll just, your dog will just limp.
yeah.
Your dog will just limp for the rest of his life. No, see, I actually like the dog too much to.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
So how are we going to bring this back to architecture? Weird relationships with our projects. It does remind me of like how emotionally involved we get in our projects as well. And some days we're elated and some days we just hate them, right?
Or it's just so you'll do whatever it takes to like get the job done right.
Yeah.
Because think about this. Like, people are like, oh, when projects, you can always tell when projects are getting close to deadlines because you always see a spike in like billable hours and everything else. And it's just like, well, yeah, but it's not like they're not working throughout the process. It's just they realize, oh my gosh, I'm about to put this out on the street, and there's a lot of things that I still need to do to like wrap it up and make sure that when we put this out that we're not putting out a pile.
Yeah.
And so people like crank it up a notch and just make sure that you're not putting something out there that you're going to be embarrassed about. And so in a way, I mean, it's very much like that. It's just like, yeah, I mean, you can make a pact with yourself that I'm only going to spend X amount of dollars on my dog or whatever, cat, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it actually happens, you're like, oh my gosh, this dog means too much to me. Take care of it however I'm going to take care of it. Same thing with our projects. Our projects mean way too much to us, and in a way it's kind of a reflection on us. And so to make sure that we're really doing something that we're proud of, and that we can pet its belly and
it is interesting that there are emotions tied up in this process, and you're totally right. Like it is something that you get connected to in familiar ways as you do with humans, right? Like these are, like, people talk about it being their baby, right? This is my project, and it's not yours, it's the owner's, and it's not your baby, it's a thing. And it's all, there's multiple ways to look at that. But I think a lot of people don't, in the general sense of people, the world, don't understand that the creator's connection with the thing they're creating. Because I don't think that that's a very widespread kind of understanding or feeling that a lot of people have with things. There's obviously everybody has like things that they adore, right? Like you've got your little special things that are on display in your house and things like that. But for that to be a building is a entirely different scale, and especially if you're deeply involved in the creation of that thing over many years, and to know so much about it and its history and how it got to be and how you made those decisions and what problems it's solving that go beyond just kind of the programmatic nature of it, whether that's environmental or spatial or emotional, even for a client, right? Or functional, obviously, at like kind of the lowest level. But there's so much kind of embedded knowledge in that will be surfaced in different ways, but never holistically by everybody. That it's a very interesting kind of concept for people to think about, and I think it is pretty widely misunderstood how deeply connected architects are to their projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about just the time investment, that we spend on all of these projects. That you
are doing surgery on that project like all the time, right?
You can't spend this much time on something, and even if you have like maybe a love-hate relationship with it or a hate-hate relationship sometimes with something, I mean, you're still emotionally invested in it. It is still something that at the end of the day you want to be proud of. The fact that, I mean, even if it's like, oh, I've got to do a pre-engineered metal building,
Hmm.
Well, you know what? If you were, if that's what you're doing and you're spending time on doing it, you're going to do the best pre-engineered metal building that you could possibly do, because that's what you're doing right now. That's what you're spending your time on. That's what you've chose to do. And so you're doing it, and you're going to try to do it the best you can. It may not be magazine worthy, but who cares about that? It's what you've chosen to spend your time on. And so we get very emotionally attached to these things. And
Hmm.
you know as well as I do, the emotions run the gamut of love, hate, elation, like satisfaction when you're finally done with things, and you move on. I mean, you don't always forget it, but you always carry a little piece of that project to your next project, because whether it's like, oh, I learned something about how to detail a window that I didn't know before, and now I can improve the next time I do a project.
Hmm.
And the next time I do that kind of window detail, now I can improve on that. So, I mean,
It is an evolution. Like
it
it's
is.
there's like a long story a long story arc happening,
Oh yeah.
as well as like a project timeline story arc happening that's
Yep.
connected but disconnected. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. I mean, to think about how people get so deeply involved in the shaping of all of those. I mean, that's what makes architecture, capital A architecture. I would hope that it's something that really does connect with people
Yeah.
beyond the design team on an emotional level, right?
So I don't know if you've ever had the question from your kids now that you've been home and they see everything that's going on in kind of like your world. And sometimes, they're like, wow, that's what he does.
Hmm.
And then they'll ask you, so do you like your job? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely do. And they're like, oh,
Doesn't sound like
because
it.
sometimes it's not the way that I read it with the way that things are going for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Just like even any kind of relationship, when you're in it, there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be some times when you're like, just draw it the way I asked, and then other times it's just like, let's work through this, and it's just like, it's
Hmm.
not you, it's me, it's everything else. you know? And so you're just like, I tell them, I'm like, I run the gamut of the things. It's just like, but there's never really one day that I like wake up dreading, oh my gosh, I gotta go do this. I mean, maybe a meeting every once in a great while do I say, ugh, I gotta have this meeting again, because it feels like, sometimes we're on repeat when it comes to, the things that we're doing on the project.
Hmm.
But other than that, though, I mean, I never really have them have that question. I mean, if you, or I mean, I have the question, and their assumption is that because of the way maybe a meeting goes, or the way a conversation goes, or the way that I kind of like react after hanging up on something, that they wonder whether or not I actually like my job. Like, nah, man.
Because you walk out the front door and slam it behind you, and I'm gonna go for a walk. Gotta walk this one off.
There's
Yeah,
been a few of those.
of course, there has been. Yeah, it is very, very much like a human relationship in that sense, and it is very much have ups and downs. And I think for
Yeah.
me, I have the luxury of being in a room where I can close a door and have conversations with people. You're in a different setting than I am, right? Like
Yeah, I'm right
you're
in
out
the
in the
middle of
open. So
exactly.
so I think a lot in my house, people know that the family knows that I'm on the phone all day long, and they can hear me probably a general state of emotion, but not specifics, right? It's kind of muffled through the walls. Um,
Yeah.
and they're definitely not seeing what's on my screen, and it would be really boring if they could, right? I'm not working on design projects. I'm not building models of buildings anymore. So they would be bored to see it anyway, and it just looks like a bunch of text on the screen in various windows. But I think for you, it's very much more the full picture of what it's like to work on a project, and I'm more of like guiding a team to execute on
Yeah.
strategic stuff for the firm. So
Well, I would definitely say that anybody out there that's, like listening and probably have like their partner or their kids, their whoever listening in on how the sausage is really made.
yeah.
So like, okay, well, how are buildings really done? And it's just like the bureaucracy that gets you from point A to point B, and all of the different ins and outs, and all of the different like just conversations, or scheduling or whatever, and just like all of the things that we go through. They're like, huh, I didn't really realize that architecture was like that. I thought you guys just sat around and drew buildings.
Yeah, it's like the reality show kind of. We talked a little bit about this, a couple episodes ago, but it
Yeah.
that is what it is actually like, and I think it's worth saying, like, when you see it all from that perspective, it's a difficult job. It really is. And I
Yeah.
think it's our ability to see beyond all that day-to-day difficult stuff that gives us the passion, that continues the passion for what we do, because without that bigger picture, it would be really hard to kind of go into it and just know that, well, today you're going to have 8 meetings and you're going to talk about the most mundane stuff. But that's not going to last forever, right? Like, that's kind of that bigger picture sense that we have about what we're actually here to do and how we
Right.
can make a difference in our communities and stuff. And so it's important, I think, especially for the younger generations who are getting involved in this, to understand that it really is the sum of all the parts, right? It's not just these little pockets of
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of downers, right?
And and it's not really downers in the sense of,
Yeah.
it may sound like it sometimes, but
But
it
that's
really
progress,
isn't.
right? It's
It's
just,
just,
yeah,
I
hard
mean,
work.
everything is a means to an end, and that means to an end is going to get you to that initial, you're going to finally get to see the construction of that initial napkin sketch. And then, so all like the weaving in and out of all of the different things that we have to deal with, it's just part of the game.